我是毛德华，今天是正月初六，也是春节假期的最后一天。我准备再做一期读书视频，作为2022年春节的结束。我们今天读一小节这本书，黑狗哥的《精神现象学》，这是我头像里那本书。我们读它的一小部分，作为迎接2022年。然后这本书呢是黑狗哥的代表作，也是他在比较年轻的时候写的一本书。我读过好多遍，我是觉得这也是少有的可以当小说来读的书。我们今天选他的比较知名的前言吧，叫序言，叫 preface， 序言中的一部分来读一下吧。它这个序言呢很长，有40多页。然后在这个老哥的译文，这个老哥叫什么名字？我看一下啊。这个老哥叫 Terry 老哥的译本里面，他的每一节他都是加标题的。那么我们读一下他这个序言的最后几部分吧，因为在最后几部分，黑格讲到了就是他对哲学的理解，就怎么做哲学，刚好就这里67节开始 The Study of Philosophy， 只有最后几节，我们写挺多呢，我们读个2-3节差不多了。就是黑格讲到了如何做哲学，这个是比较少见的，黑格专门讲这个东西。我们读一下这一部分吧。The study of philosophy is hindered by the conduct of only clever argumentation, but it is hindered equally as much as the kind of acculturation which refuses to engage in such clever argumentation, and which instead bases itself on widely accepted truths. The possessor of those widely accepted truths thinks he has no need to re-examine them. Rather, he takes them to be fundamental, and he believes he is enabled not only to assert them, but to be both judge and jury by means of them. In this regard, it is especially necessary to make philosophy again into a serious business. In all the sciences and the arts, in all skills and the crafts, the firm conviction prevails that in order to master them, one must spend a considerable amount of trouble in learning and practice. On the other hand, with regard to philosophy, there is a prejudice which in fact now seems to prevail, namely that although anyone with eyes and figures who is a quiet leader, and at last is known for their reason in a position to make choose, everybody nonetheless immediately understands how to philosophize and how to pass judgment on philosophy simply because he possesses the standard for doing so in his natural reason, as if he did not likewise possess in his own foot the standard for making a shoe. It seems as if the possession of philosophy only consists in a lack of any specific kind of knowing and a plan of study, and that as soon as one begins to acquire any such knowing and a plan of study, philosophy itself ceases. Philosophy is quite often held to be a kind of formal knowledge, devoid of all content, but what's severely lacking in such a field is the insight that according to the content of any kind of knowledge and science, what counts as truth can only deserve the name of truth when philosophy has had a hand in its production. Other sciences may try as much as they like to get by without philosophy and to rely only on clever argumentation. But without philosophy, they are unable to possess any life, spirit, or truth in themselves. With a view to genuine philosophy, we see the following. In lieu of the long course of cultural formation, a movement as rich as it is profound and through which spirit arrives at knowing, we now see the view that both the immediate revelation of the divine and the views of healthy common sense, neither of which are bothered or educated by any other type of knowing or by genuine philosophy, are supposed to be a complete equivalent for philosophy, and that they are as good as surrogate for philosophy as tracery is lauded as a surrogate for coffee. It is not present to note how ignorance mixed with formulas tasteless crudity, which is self-incapable of concentrating its thoughts on abstract proposition, and even less so on the connections among many such propositions, assures itself at one time that it is self-freedom and its tolerance of thinking, and at another time it even assures itself of its own genius. Genius once was, as everyone knows, all arranged in poetry, just as it is nowadays also arranged in philosophy. However, instead of poetry, what was produced by this type of brilliance was, when it made any sense at all, only trivial prose, or when it went beyond that, just loony chatter. Now, in the same way, natural philosophizing, which holds itself to be too good for the concept, and which through this deficiency takes itself to be intuitive and poetic thinking, trades in the arbitrary combination of an imagination which is quite simply disorganized by its own thoughts. It trades in constructions that are neither fish nor form, neither poetry or philosophy. On the other hand, when it is flowing down a more peaceful riverbed of healthy common sense, natural philosophy dishes out at best a rhetoric of trivial truths. When it is reproached about the meaninglessness of what it offers, it assures us in relying that the sense and the fulfillment of its meaning lies in its own heart, and must in the same way also be present in the hearts of others, by using such phrases as the heart's innocence, purity of conscience, and so on. It supposes that it has spoken final things against which nobody can object, nor beyond which anything more can be demanded. However, what was supposed to happen there was not that the best was to be hidden away in inwardness. The best was supposed to be drawn up out of that deep well and brought up to the light of day. Such philosophizing could have long ago spared itself the trouble of bringing forth final truths of that sort. There were long since to be found, say, in the catechism, in popular proverbs, etc. It is not difficult to grasp such truths in their indeterminateness and distortions. And it is often not difficult to point out that in those truths themselves, there is a consciousness of their very opposite. If their proponent takes the trouble to be pulled himself out of the disarray into which he has led himself, he will fall into new confusions, and may very well make an outburst to the effect that such and such is settled and that anything else is sophistry, a slogan used to by plain common sense against cultural materialism, just as, for as long as anyone can remember the phrase daydreaming, has summed up how those ignorant of philosophy has taken note of it, while the proponent of common sense appeals to feeling, to an oral devouring wisdom. He has nothing more to do with anyone who disagrees. He only has to explain that he has nothing more to say to anyone who does not find and feel the same thing in himself. In other words, he tramples the roots of humanity on foot. For the nature of humanity is to drive men to agreement with one another, and humanity's existence lies only in the commonality of consciousness that has been brought about. The anti-human, the only animalistic, consists in staying put in the sphere of feeling, and in being able to communicate only through such feeling. No matter how much a man asks for a loyal road to science, no more convenient and comfortable way can be stressed to him than to put his trust in healthy common sense, and then for what else remains, to advance simply with the times and with philosophy, to read refused philosophical works, and perhaps even to go so far as to read the prefaces and first paragraphs of the works themselves. After all, the preface provides the general principles on which everything turns, and the refuse provide both the historical memoranda and the critical assessment of which, because it is a critical assessment, is on a higher plane than what is assessed. One can of course traverse this ordinary path in one's dressing grown. However, if one is to take exaltation in the eternal, the holy, and the infinite, then one should take one's stripes on that path when clad in the vestment of the higher priest, a path which self already has immediate being as at its center, and which consists in the inspired resourcefulness of deep and original ideas and of lighting flashes for elevated thought. But in the same way that those depths do not reveal the wellspring of the essence, these sky rockets and are not yet the imprint. True thought and scientific insight can only be won by the labor of the concept. Concepts alone can produce the universality of knowing, which is not a common indeterminateness and patronage of plain common sense, but rather that of culturally mature and accomplished cognition. It does not bring forth some uncommon universality of a reason whose talents have been ruined by the indolence and self-conceit of genius. That it brings forth this truth purified into its native form, which is capable of being the possession of all consciousness, of all self-conscious reason. 这一句话非常重要啊，他就说 ideas， 他这里 true thoughts and scientific insight can only be won by the labor of the concept. Concept 在黑格尔的所有的哲学里面，或者是至少在他的这本精神现象学里面 ，concept 就是世界的原动力啊，这就是有点像康德在《纯粹理性批判》里面说的，叫做一个统觉吧，中文翻译成统觉吧，就是康德通过统觉让人把一切的能力连接起来。那么在黑格尔这里，他通过 concept 概念把一切联系起来，就是下一句说的 concepts alone can produce the universality of knowing， 大概就是这个情况。